The time now is 9:39 a.m. We have a quorum and the meeting has been duly posted. Good morning and welcome to the Board of Trustees Budget Workshop. Please stand and join us for a moment of silence and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and a salute to the Texas flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Board members present, starting on your left and my right, are Trustee Joyce Foreman, Trustee Elizabeth Jones, Trustee Nancy Bingham, Trustee Bernadette Nuttall, Trustee Mike Marat. Our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Mike Miles, joins us, and I'm Miguel Solis, Board President. Do we have a translator in the audience? Okay. And I don't see any public officials at the moment. This morning we're here to discuss the draft 2015-2016 proposed budget. And I believe Dr. Terry is going to lead us through. Trustees, you all have this budget presentation binder where the information is. Dr. Terry, please begin.
I have a question, please,
Sure.
before we start. Dr. Terry, when are we going to be presented with the backup information for the budget? As a trustee, I can't support trying to vote on the budget without backup information.
Good morning, Mr. President, board members, chiefs. We certainly will provide any information that you want or feel that you need in support. You must remember that this actually is our third try at a budget workshop, and what this is a preliminary, and I will say that all of the numbers in here are preliminary, and those numbers will change. If you notice that we provided with you is a binder, and what we will do as time goes on, we will be pulling pages and replacing pages, and we are working on what we call the brown pages, and this book is about 500 pages.
That's
and
okay.
That will be provided to you, we hope, prior to our next board meeting at the end of May. And then we will have another meeting, of course, in June, 2 meetings in June at least, and any other workshops that you all would like, and we're more than happy. I would like to introduce actually some people in my budget department, Christine Campos, who is the assistant director, and Brandy Mayo, who is the director, and then Cheryl Wilson. I think they're in the audience, and I want to thank them all. As you know, our executive director of budget did resign about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, and so I want to thank them, and I also want to thank the award-winning budget department, who has over the last 4 years received the GFOA and the ASBO award for budgets, and with their help, I think we'll have all your questions answered, and any information you want, and anything that you would care to see, we will provide for you.
Let me finish with the superintendent. Superintendent, you've heard me say for the last year, I'm a visual person. And I would like to have the brown pages delivered as soon as possible, because I like to go through line items to try to get a better understanding. I understand we have an award-winning department, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. I'm interested in being able to try to make the best decision for this district, and I can't make it with these kinds of presentations. Thank you.
Can you, if you don't mind, would you please have the individuals that are in the budget department, can you just have them stand up?
So we can see who they are. Just have them stand up.
Everybody here in the budget department, please stand up. I know I've got some in the back.
All right, thank you.
I had a question. You mentioned that we planned 3 workshops.
I said we got 3 more, at least 3 more
No,
meetings.
you said that 3
We've
were
got,
planned. Dr.
Oh,
Terry,
yes, yes.
I'm just trying to figure out the dates, because I don't remember 3. I remember 1,
There were-
and something with, you counseled it.
No, we had one budget workshop planned. I believe 4 of us were here. 5 didn't show up, so we didn't have a quorum. We had a second budget workshop planned. That was during the ice storm, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not sure if there was another one planned. Those are the 2 that I can recall at the moment, but I'm sure that there has been, because there's been multiple attempts to try to get people together. So, but here we are. So, Dr. Terry, if you don't mind, please begin.
Point of information.
Point of information. Okay, please state your point of information.
There has already been a posting of when there will be the public hearings for reviewing the budget. Many of those are actually occurring very soon. So my point of information has to do with what is the exact information that will be presented to the public if the board hasn't really made or set priorities or made the effective decisions to take that information to the public. I know budget people do an exceptional job, but they don't make the decisions regarding what the priorities are and where the spending goes. They simply make sure the money is allocated and managed appropriately.
Well, I think you'll see that in the budget that we're presenting to you is all geared around the board goals. And we go out with these 5 meetings, public meetings for the budget, is actually looking and seeking for public input as to what is important to the public in the budget and in the budget process. And we take notes and we bring that back, and again we will present that to you all as we continue in this process.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Terry, please begin.
I certainly also want to thank Sequetta Marks, who is the director of our special revenue funds, and Velia Laura, who is our director of our demographics, who essentially kind of starts the budget process off, because all of our budget is geared around kids and the number of kids that are going to show up at our schools. And then finally, certainly all of the chiefs who have participated in this. And certainly I want to say that I want to thank the superintendent, because I do think that maybe with very few exceptions is that this superintendent does something very unlike most school districts that I know of and have certainly participated in my long career in education, and that is he provides key actions and directions to help build that budget based on the board goals. Also, as Ms. Foreman has pointed out, you don't have a lot of numbers here, but let me tell you, there are a lot of numbers that are available for you to look at and to see. Most all of those numbers are online. We have a statistical section of the CAFR, which will show you cost on a per student basis, will show you growth in cost, reductions in costs, and is a very rich in detail. That's online. Also, we have online what we call the EFAX books. We will have the new one up online soon. So with that, we will begin. These, as Ms. Jones has pointed out, are meetings that will take place. All of our meetings will be concluded before the first board meeting in June. These are important calendar dates. I'm not going to go over all of them. The one from my perspective in terms of the budget, there are 2 dates. The first date is, some way it did not get onto this particular copy here, but that date is June 1, which is the last day of the legislative session. The last day of the legislative session, I believe it's in your book, is very important, because you have to remember that part of our budget, meaning the revenue that we receive, is state revenue, and there are, I believe, close to 200 bills that may or may not affect the revenue side. We've done our best to be conservative, yet do look at the legislation and what we think legislation that may pass. We know that one of the controversial legislative bills is House Bill 1759, which would add another $800 million to funding of the school districts. And in terms of the Senate version for appropriations, I believe it's 1.1 billion, whereas the House appropriation for education is 2.2 billion. So you can see that there's quite a discrepancy, and we do not know the conclusion yet, but we will certainly know by June 1st when the legislation ends. And that's not even to consider the court case that is still pending at the Supreme Court dealing with funding for school districts. The next important date is going to be in August, and well, I take that back. The next important date in terms of the budget will be the June 25th, when the board will adopt the budget. And you must remember, by law, you will adopt 3 budgets. You will adopt the budget for the general operating fund, which is the fund in which we do practically all of the operations. The tax rate on that is $1.04. You also adopt the debt service. It's kind of like our mortgage, which is another 24 cents. And then food service will be adopted by law. The next important date is going to be in August. Whether the board decides to call an election for whatever reason has to take place on August 25th. Again, that is, I take that back, it's August 24th. This would have to be a special board meeting. And then August 27th, which is the adoption of the tax rate, and the adoption of the tax rate actually could take place on August 24th if the board so chooses. Again, here is what you all must adopt by law: the general fund, the food service, and the debt service. We will look at those 3 budgets, and we will also present to you special revenue fund, which is something under $200 million, but we want to give you kind of a glimpse of that, though you don't adopt that. These are the board goals. I'm sure you all have these board goals memorized and probably know them better than I. We try to build a budget around those goals. These are the district action plans given to us by our superintendent, which helps us gear our actions around these board goals. So let's start with the biggest of the fund, and that's the general fund. So again, the tax rate that pushes the general fund is the M&O tax rate, which is at $1.05, just slightly over, $1.04, just slightly over $1.04. It's been that way, if I'm not mistaken, for about 8 years. We also have the INS sinking fund, which is what we pay our debt with, which is just over 24 cents. Right now, at this point, we're not planning to change either of those. We have taxable value. The taxable value has gone up considerably. Last year, that taxable value went up just over 7%, and this year it has gone up over 8 to 8.5%. So you read the newspaper. I think the newspaper had headlines that talked about the increase being 8.6%. And we took just 1% because there are protests, and so we tried to be a little bit conservative.
And if I may add,
Excuse me, Dr. Chair.
Yeah,
Just
1 minute here. I wonder if somebody in the budget department can get the correct budget presentation onto the screen, because this one is dated, and so if you would take care of that immediately, I'd appreciate that.
We're working on that, Jim. I just let Dino know that we're getting a fresh one. We have brought a fresh one this morning, and it's the later version.
Okay.
to give you a pause and to go back on
Good.
taxable value, just so everybody knows, tomorrow, I believe, is the day that the DCAD will be publishing what is the estimated value, which is the preliminary value before the protests and related period will open, for which then in July or the end of July they'll certify the tax rolls. So just so you know, that number may be even a little bit higher than what's been put here. So
Thank you.
that gives him a chance to make the transition. But the values have been going up, and it is quite dramatic. And many of our jurisdictions, we had even larger increases than 8.5% when you get into specific areas within the county that we overlap. And Wilmer, I think, is a good example of great growth. So we're seeing quite a bit of activity in commercial development that is driving our values quite substantially.
And I know you sit on their board, if I'm not mistaken.
I do, and that's why I'm glad
Thank
to
you very
bring the
much.
report.
Thank you very much for keeping us informed.
I'm not, no, the taxing jurisdictions are the reason your taxes go up. The actual value is what we're talking about
You're
here.
the reason my value went up.
And we do not play a part in that whatsoever, so you can take that up as with the ARB like everybody else.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
But it is important that we know what value is to be able to, for our sake, fund our important programs and activities and resources for the sake of our children.
Can you can read from my paper?
Yeah, can we?
Oh, we got the right one up.
Okay. And is this now
Well, very quick.
corresponding with what we have in front of us?
Yes, it should.
Okay, great, thank you.
Go back. This is the enrollment increase. Look at the enrollment row. You can see that from fiscal year end 13 to 14, it increased approximately 0.5%. The following year to 15, it increased about 1/3%. And next year, we are projecting that it will increase just under 1%, or 1,500 students. And do remember that the 1,500 students is what we have to build the budget, because we have to assume that all of those students will show up at our school, and so we have to prepare for all of those showing up. Of course, when those students show up, they don't show up every single day. And so we have what's called average daily attendance. And the average daily attendance runs approximately 92% of the enrollment, and it's the average daily attendance. It's the weighted average daily attendance. And what do I mean by weighted average daily attendance? Weighted average daily attendance is the state for a special ed student gives us a little bit more weight than what we would call a regular student. And so it's the weighted average daily attendance in which we receive state funding on. This is the estimated total general fund revenue for last year, and you can see that the local amount is by far the greatest portion of the pie. The state is only just under 30%, with federal 5%. Then next year, essentially the percentages don't change, but you can see the amount does change. And this is then a closer look, a more detailed look at the local amount, and you can see the current taxes, which represents the increase in the assessed value of the property, whether that's commercial property or that's home property, is the greatest portion of that increase, from $875 million to $946 million. This here chart on the next page is just showing you a history of the tax levy, which is based on the assessed values. And you can see way back in 2005, it had reached $1 billion, and then we started in on the Great Recession. And we do not have, we have the projected, but right now the 2014 isn't finalized. The general estimated revenue for the state You can see that pretty much the foundation school program, we're projecting to go up along with available school funds. And the one thing that I will kind of guarantee you for the 2015-16 projected numbers, we do know that those will change. And that's why I say the June 1st meeting is not the June 1st meeting, but the June 1st ending of the legislative session will have a impact on those numbers. Exactly how it impacts, we don't know, but this is our projected number for 15-16, which is just under $400 million. On the federal side, you will see that there is a reduction on the federal side, and the federal side, in a certain sense, it's not really a reduction. What had happened is that with the accounting department and with our E-rate department, we got for the first time this current fiscal year, subsequently almost $38 million, $36 million, which essentially was trying to catch up from when we were still trying to have the E-rate money released. We did get 2 payments over the course. Actually, it's probably 3 payments, but in any case, it totaled about $36 million. So next year, we certainly expect E-rate money to the tune of about $5 to $7 million, but we don't have as much catch-up money available to us on E-rate. Also, we hired a brand new director of our Mac SHARS program, and we found that we had left in previous years about $15 million on the table that had not been collected in past years, and we made applications and we received the additional dollars last year for 14-15. We will still get Mac SHARS numbers in dollars in 15-16, but we won't have catch-up dollars. So that almost $31 million is because of last year. You can see if you go back to the 13 and 14 column, actuals went up over $34 million. But now when we go to 15-16, it comes back down because we're not making up those dollars on the federal side. We also on the federal side gets BABS, Build American bonds, about $18 million. That will continue until about the year 2035. And then we also receive a subsidy from the federal government on our QSCB bonds, which are the bonds we're using to build the new science labs and renovate our HVAC systems, and we'll continue to receive those subsidies until 2033. Now this is the proposed increase in the 2015-16 expenditures. We have what we call our base budget, and then we have increases. We expect salary and benefits for non-teaching staff. And remember, the teaching staff is going to go on to the TEI new schedule, which we'll talk about shortly. But the salary, benefits, and increase is $10.4 million. We also have TRS contribution will increase to $12.8 million. Do note the note at the bottom of it. Last year, the state paid $10 million of that. Currently, is projected they will not contribute that this following year. However, there may be a change in some of the legislation that is up in Austin right now. We just don't know. We're not counting on it. Also, in that figure, we had brought to you in a previous meeting with the board, a 2.8 contribution for all of our employees, or $27 per month per employee towards their health insurance. So that takes that number to $12.8 million. School leadership and campuses is $2.4 million. We will go over that. Interest on short-term bridge plan. If you remember, we brought the bridge plan, and we were taking 75 million was to be handled through maintenance tax notes. We believe that the interest on the short-term bridge plan portion of that with the tax notes would be 1.5 million. Also remember that the board approved 43 million out of the fund balance to be used for that short-term bridge plan, which we will talk about. Also, special education moving from special revenue fund to the general operating fund of 14.6 million. You'll see that entails 109 positions. What is important for the board to realize is that previously we had a lot of carryover. So what that means is that from one year to the next year, if we don't spend the federal dollars, we are allowed to carry it over. Some of it you actually lose and doesn't carry over, but a great portion of it carried over. And since I've been CFO, I've given direction to our new Special Revenue Fund Director that we want to make a concerted effort not to carry over money, but to spend the money within the year that we got it. And that is in fact happened. And in the special education, we had ORA money, which was given many years ago, and most of that funds special ed positions. That has come to an end, no longer will be carried over. And in order to continue with this special revenue, not special revenue, but with the special ed education at the same level, we have to move that into the general operating fund, so it's 14.6 million. As you know, there's considering right now the opening of new schools, 6.2, the Personal Learning High School, Wilmer Hutchinson, Harley, and Halsey, 6.2 million. Also, the DTI and the Distinguished Teacher Review. Part of federal people that are paid out of federal money will be doing part of the reviews. When they do those reviews with the DTR, we cannot use federal dollars, so we have to move part of their salaries into the general operating, and that will cost us about $2 million. Also, if this board does decide to do an election, the election will cost us $1 million. As you all know, the internal audit has actually been approved by the board or the subcommittee for an increase in $103,000 actually, and I think Mr. Singleton has been very conservative and has only asked for $100,000. This here is then the estimated new, we call it DAP, District Action Plan, expenditures that we are geared around the goals, the board goals, and you can see what they are. There may be some concerns that, like in goal 2, goal 8, and goal 7, there are zeros, but I want to remind you that last year for principals we spent 2.4 million, for culture we spent 1.3 million, and human resources 34.5 million. Now, most of this money in those areas became what we call base budget and would continue into the next year. So the actual increase around board goals are as presented here, and we'll be willing to answer more specific questions about those monies as we finish this presentation. We're looking at pre-K, and again, we're trying to be sure that we identify all of the money that is being spent in the early childhood education. We increased it in 2014-15, and in 2015-16, we right now have identified an additional $7.2 million for early education. As we all know, we believe that early education will help drive this district academic achievement up. The next is the estimated expenditure in general fund to support board goals. which is one with the percentage, and we just threw in that extra slide to reassure you that we're going to spend that money. So I apologize for that, and we gave you an excellent. So here, this next page is the estimated general fund expenditures. You can see, again, 81% in 14-15. It is certainly the largest portion of our budget, our total budget for expenditures, and this is estimated. We're not done with this current year. We do believe we'll be approximately just under $1.4 billion next year. Again, the percentage will stay approximately the same, 81% for salaries and benefits, but the total budget will increase to 1.479. This here is actual expenditure on a per student by function. You will approve the budget by function at the end of this process on June 28th, I believe. I'm not going to go over these numbers, but I show you the numbers and the numbers comparisons to other school districts for you to review. Also, we're looking at the actual expenditure by percent by function, so you can look at us and other school districts in and around our area. This here is the salary scale based on longevity for 14-15 for bachelor's degrees, and it is showing ours, and it is showing the state requirement, and it is showing the average ISD without Dallas ISD. I show you this because this is what it looked like in the past, but our scale will not look like this anymore. This is, again, for the masters, where you can compare Dallas ISD with the state average, or state required, and those the average ISDs without Dallas ISD. So that was the old scale. This here is the new scale, the new TEI system. It is certainly revolutionary in terms of what the state is doing, and what it is doing, it is basing teachers on performance. As you have seen many presentations on the distribution and a normal distribution, which at the medium is 40%. This particular distribution, that is what we're projecting right now. I can tell you that this distribution will change when we get to the actual numbers and closer to it, but our folks modeling, the good modelers, we believe that the mean will be about 35% or 36%, and you can see if you look at the dotted lines, the first dotted lines up the Y scale is the average salary based on longevity of 53,000 per student, per teacher. And then under the TEI average salary, we believe will move to about 55,300. That would essentially represent a 4.3% increase in salaries for teachers. This here is showing you, this survey was done by TASB, and this is their survey for next year's raise by school districts. If you look at 3%, 2% to 5% represents approximately 58% of the districts, so essentially 58% of the districts across the state will give a 3% or more raise next year, is what they are calculating it to be. The proposed salary increases, administration is proposing 3% increase for selected work groups, employees eligible. Teachers are not TEI related instructional professional. We go on the new TEI system. You can see the support staff, custodial services, maintenance, police, central administrations. The employees must be paid, be on a paid status and approved leave of absence to receive it. The employees not eligible for the proposed 3% increase include, and you can read there. The employees that are above or will be above the maximum of the pay range may receive all or some of the increase in the form of an over the max stipend. And the reason we do that is we don't want to stretch out the ranges. So what we do is we leave the range on a particular step set, but we do give them an increase through a stipend. Employees that change jobs during the year will have a salary commensurate with the new role, which may affect the over the maximum stipend. The district has moved designated work groups to alternate compensation plans. As I say, you're aware of that with the TEI. This then is a comparison of the TEI. I think I want to thank all of the chiefs and the superintendent, and I think you can see that they've done a wonderful job in the sense that last year in 14-15, the number of employees, all funds, is 19,719, and that is going to increase only by 75, and that is 19,794. The largest increase is teachers, but you have to remember that 109, that's why you see on the special revenue funds the negative 155. Well, 109 of those are special ed, and they are moving up into the teachers in the general fund. And we also, in those teachers, the increase in teachers, 213, 43 of those are going to be pre-K teachers. 52 of those teachers are going to be in the 4 new schools, and 4 teachers will be for IR schools next year. We do have in the budget, we've got $3 million for leveling, which we may need, and another $1.2 million for 20 new teachers for the increase in enrollment. So the relatively small increase in FTEs next year. This chart, I believe you've seen before, but what this is showing you is the student-to-teacher ratios. Elementaries is going to stay the same on average, 1 teacher to 16 students. The middle schools 1 to 17, and the high schools 1 to 18. Though we do staff at a larger, the actual numbers ending up are lower. This here is then the staffing formulas that we actually staff by in the budget, but you can see that the actual ratios are lower than what we staff at the budget. Summary of the general fund. This then represents the increase. If you look at first of all, the projected 2014-15, you can see the revenue and other sources is 1.3 million, just under 1.4 million. The expenditures are 1.3 million, just under 4 million. We do expect $18 million will be taken out of the fund balance, which currently is at $342 million. But I do want to remember that the board, when we brought forward the bridge plan, that we had moved $43 million out of the general fund in order to pay cash for a great portion of the bridge plan. We do believe that by the end of this year, we will have made up almost $25 million of that, dropping the decrease to the fund balance by only 18 million. So our fund balance would be 324 million, almost 325 million, as opposed to 299 million if we were not able to make that up. Also, I will remind the board that we put in last year a 4% credit against the expenditures for vacancies. So we have done very well financially again this year. This is what we expect then next year, is that the beginning fund balance for next year would be that 324, or the end of last year's, or the end of this year's fund balance that we're projecting. And we are projecting that the estimated revenues minus expenditures would be $19 million as the budget is currently, which would drop the fund balance by the end of next year down to 305 million. Food service. The food service is the next fund that you all will have to approve. You can see for 15-16, the total revenue increase is just over $3.5 million. The expenditures, food service believes, will be matched. The beginning fund balance and the ending fund balance, actually this should be increased in the 2014-15 by over $1.5 million. Next year, we are projecting there to be a balanced budget fund balance at 17.66 million. Debt service. The debt service, this current year was total revenue was 200 million. The expenditures was 160 million, so that we in fact have with principal and interest lowered our debt to $4 billion. Please note the note on the bottom line, through 2 refundings over the life of all of our debt, we have saved 130 million by those refundings, which certainly is less of a burden on our taxpayers. Next year, we're predicting that total revenues will be $211 million, and that the projection, principal, interest, and fees, 211 million payment, so that the fund balance will end up at $3.9 billion by the end of next year. Finally, summary is that the general fund, as we said, is the total revenue would be $1.4 billion. Expenditures would be 1.479. We're taking another 4% expected vacancy rate out of that, which would leave total expenditure of 4.23, which means that the right now our budget would eat into our fund balance by 19 million, which would leave the fund balance at 305 million by the end of next year. Food service, we believe, will be zeroed, no change. Then the debt service, we also believe that the total expenditures and revenues will be equal. Special revenue funds. Special revenue funds are the governmental funds that come to us, flow through the state. You all do not budget for this, or you do not approve of the budget. It's just money that comes in. A lot of this is entitlement. We have broken down those special revenue funds by Title 1, 2, 3, IDA, Carl Perkins, and others. You can see that we are projecting for next year about $150 million. They will fund 1,773 FTEs. What we're showing you here is the special revenue funds, and those special revenue funds, note that the increase, decrease, the decreases in red, and you can see that most of these are decreases, and the decreases again total of $14.5 million, almost $14.6 million, And those decreases are due to the rollover. We have spent the rollover. We did lose some in terms of the ARA money not continuing. And this then is showing you the special revenue funds, is showing campus and non-campus. And I must point out to you that the non-campus is essentially saying that these are funds that are controlled not by the campuses, but are controlled by central office. And those non-campus dollars that are controlled by central office are actually used by central office for programs out at the schools. We are trying to install a cost accounting system where we can try to identify all of the funds that go out at the schools, so that in future years we will move more and more. You'll see more and more dollars sitting where they actually should be accounted for and not done solely by control. This then is the rest of that showing the same thing, campus and non-campus dollars, and again you can see that the reduction of almost $14.6 million. Okay, I think I'm ready. Ask away.
Great. Okay, Trustee Neal.
Yeah, Jim, so I just want to make sure this is clear in my mind. All these, on these last couple of sheets, where it looks like we're losing money, we're just spending the money that we should be spending each year rather than putting it to the next year?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
It's the special revenue fund where you all don't approve the budget, but what had happened is that we have been rolling about 38 million, somewhere in the 30 millions over and over and over a year, and we gave directions to our special revenue funds, and especially with school leadership help, and we're actually spending the money that is coming in within that year. And so actually there are going to be programs that who kind of lived off this roll every year, which we're going to have to decide whether in fact we move into the general fund instead of or not. So.
But the benefit that I see is that we're putting it directly to the kids in
That's
the
right.
current year that we get the money.
Exactly.
Which is a good thing.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly what we're doing.
Okay, good.
I have a question.
Yep, Trustee Nettle.
Jim, I'm working from the presentation that was sent to us,
Yes.
and I think the pages are different.
Yes, they are.
And so I'm
we made quite a
getting
number
this
of difference.
presentation at the table and not being
Yes.
able to compare the two. It's kind of frustrating as a trustee to be
I
able to
apologize for that.
make an informed decision. On page 20 from the presentation that was emailed to the board members,
Can you read the title and I might be
general
able-
fund compared to 2014-2015 expenditures.
And what number was it?
It's page 20. And I looked for it in the presentation that was at our desk. I couldn't see which ones. I don't know if it's all changed. It talks about staffing ratios, campus, salary and benefits increased 10.4 million including. So looking at that, I had a question about Skyline, is an underfunded high school campus in the ISD. And compared to every large high school in the surrounding suburbs, when you look, it is missing a lot of regular ed dollars. And a couple of our schools are missing that. So how are we going to make sure that our regular ed dollars are on our campuses and comparable to regular?
Well, I can tell you is that we fund from the general fund. Well, first of all, let's say this, is that you have to remember that, again, 81% of our budget is staffing, all right? And so if you're looking just at a particular school, what can happen is that you can have a school that may have a average longevity of teachers than another school. And so that will tend to look like the school with the the longevity of teachers has got more funds than the school with the less longevity.
And Dr. Terry, because of time, and as I looked at 9:30, and then we 11 o'clock supposed to have another meeting, I understand that. I'm looking at strict program expenditures. I'm not looking at the staffing of the teachers. So in talking about program expenditures, direct resources to our classrooms so our students can be successful, what is the regular ed dollar amount that we spend on our campuses for high school?
I'll have to research that because I don't know.
So can someone, Superintendent Miles, tell me
Yes.
how much money are we going to make sure our schools have in regular ed dollars so our teachers and our staff can do the job with our children?
Where other than salaries, we allocate out to the schools, I believe, and I'll correct this if I'm wrong, about $100 per student.
Well, when we look at the Texas education for regular ed dollars, for example, at Skyline, per student was $2,659.
Okay.
Then when I look at the regular ed dollars for Booker T was $5,775. When I look at Lincoln was $4,032. So can someone please tell me how much do we allocate? What is the dollar amount that we should be reaching per student for regular ed dollars to our campus for program
And
expenditures?
what I'm telling you is that we allocate approximately $100 per student.
$100
Now,
per student.
we
So
do
I'll
it-
take the
Wait,
enrollment.
let me get to your direct question. So your direct question is you're looking at what are called program intent codes. And so program intent codes looks at the student body. And in the student body, you may have what we call regular students. We may also have special ed students. We may have gifted and talented students. And so the dollars are accounted for given the type of students that are out there. So instead of looking at regular versus regular at a particular high school, you really need to look at the total amount of dollars at each one of the high schools and then look at it on a per student basis.
So Jim,
Because-
please stop right there. I understand what you're saying. So you're saying $100 for the whole campus, $100 for program expenditures is what we spend per child. $100. Wait. No, I need clarification. It's $100 per student.
You're talking
Skyline-
about discretionary money.
Wait.
Yes, I'm
I'm
talking about the
looking
same
at
same
thing
Texas.
she's
I'm
talking
looking at.
That's right, you're right.
And so
It's not
you
the
said
same thing.
$100 per student, correct?
Non-discretionary, but not by programs, because programs, we can have additional dollars spent at a school
Could I just
because
get
we
the answer
have
for what
special
program? Can I
programs.
just get an answer? Program
trying to
expenditures,
answer.
how much is the dollar we spend per student for program expenditures?
So let me try to help because we did this study and we gave it to the board. For example, total non-salary budget per student, depending on the high school, ranges, right? So at Pinkston, it's $721 per student. So the question is, what are you talking about as programs? Jim's talking about discretionary money that the campus spends.
Right.
Programs can be anything from ESL to ACE to any number of things. So we break it down by total salary per student, total non-salary budget per student, federal dollars per student, GO per student. It's a complicated thing, but we've given the information. We can provide it again.
I'm looking right here where it says the study class I went to, School Finance 101, funding of Texas public schools. There's a basic foundation money, am I correct? Basic allotment. What is that dollar amount for regular ed for basic allotment on program expenditures? The state of Texas breaks that out. They have the teachers in one category, am I correct? Then program expenditure. A child can come to a school and they can be a regular ed child, they can be a special ed child. There's more money on that. They can be a Title I child, they get more money for that. They get more money for bilingual. So they can come and get 4 buckets of money on the one child. But for a regular ed child, like my daughter, who she's not special ed, she's not in a Title I school, and she's not bilingual, what is the dollar amount that should go to our students per student? You said $100 per student. So if I look at Skyline, they have 4,657 students times 100. They should get 4,656. How much that times 100? They're only getting regular ed $2,659. For gifted and talented, I see $0. For career and tech, I see $1,000. And for students with disabilities, which is our special ed population, $478. So let's go down to my next question. How much should we get for high school allotment? High schools for 9th through 12th grade. What is the dollar amount that the state gives us for high school allotment?
I'd have to look at that number.
Well, I'm going to tell you right here, Jim. The state says high school allotment. The high school allotment provides school district and open enrollment charter schools with $275 for each student in ADA in grades 9 through 12. Any school district, including a district subject to the provisions of TEC Chapter 41, may receive the benefit of high school allotment.
I believe the high school allotment ended last year.
Okay, so going to the question. Last year, we should have received $275 per student for high school allotment. Am I correct?
It was still in place last year.
It was in place last year. It just went out of place this year. So going to my next question, what are we doing about high school allotment? Because the state just approved that they're mishing that all up in something.
We treat all schools exactly the same in terms of how much money that we give schools, discretionary dollars also in terms of the number of teachers. By state requirements and the accounting book, which is called the FAS, right, which is about 800 pages, we have to account for it. And we account for it differently than how the state funds us. As an example, special ed, the state gives us X number of dollars for special ed, but we spend way more on special ed than the state requires us to.
So how much do we spend per child on special ed?
Again, I'd have to research that. I don't have it off the top of my head. It's
Do
probably
anyone know, can a
countless.
special ed person come and tell me how much we spend per student on special ed?
It would need to be the budget folks that do that since they've got all the.
Is there all the budget people out here? Can someone please tell me how much we spend per student
We'll
on
be
special
able
ed?
to provide that information to you.
Could I get that before the end of the budget workshop, please? Because what I'm trying to get to is understand our schools. We have 43 IR schools. And I'm looking at accelerated education. We have some schools that we're spending $0 on accelerated education. So schools are drowning. And they need funding to be successful, to make our students academic successful. So when I see 47 million increase in requests for administration, but I'm looking at what we're spending at the campus level, and that's what really matters. So I would like to know the per student per special ed, because I see in some of our schools, they get $0 for special ed, and I know there's some special students with disability over there.
Well, as you can see, that we're putting on 213 more FTEs as teachers. So that $47 million is, most of that is geared towards campuses. It's not geared towards central office.
Okay, so, and go back to high school allotment, Dr. Smithsko. You said we didn't get it this year?
I believe last year was the last year, but
We'll
Dr.
have to
Terry and I will double
research
check
it.
that.
Can you please double check?
Yeah.
Because I see, this training I went to was 2013-14. So you're saying the last year was
Yeah, and now we're in
14, 15?
I don't know. I don't know, but we'll get you the answer.
Can someone
Right
get
now.
that for me?
We still get high school allotment.
We do now?
Yes, we
Okay.
still do.
We still get high school allotment, and high school allotment is $275 per
I
student.
believe it's 275, 271, I can't remember the exact number.
The state says we get
Yeah, so,
$275.
yes.
So my question then is, Lincoln High School, I see high school allotment for the 2013-14 school year. They didn't get any high school allotment money.
Okay, we can look.
Skyline didn't get any high school allotment money.
We can look into it if you have specific campuses.
South didn't get any high school allotment money. So where did the high school allotment go if we're supposed to give $275 per student for the high school, by what Texas say? It says each campus in an open enrollment charter with $275 per student, 9th through 12th grade. So could someone please tell me, if I'm looking at the TEA budget, high school allotment,
You're looking at
where
the
did they
PIMS
go?
reports, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the PIMS report that matters, that we submit to the state. Why did these campuses not get high school allotment money? And it's supposed to help our kids with their academics. I would like that question by the end of this meeting, please.
Well, I'm not sure that we
That's very
can
concerning to me.
provide the reasoning, because we also have to look at the PIMS report, and we know that from experience over the last couple of months that what we've reported to PEEMS and what got printed out on PEEMS was not what we reported.
So you're telling me the Texas Education
I'm not
Agency
telling,
did
no, I'm
wrong?
not telling you that. What I'm telling you is we need to research it, and we'll need some time to research it, and we will research it, and we will get back to you what is going on.
What is going on with the high school allotment? Okay, my last question that I had was about, I was looking at the increases on the teachers, for the teacher salaries. Do our teachers new to the district that's coming in at the same level on TEI, will they get that increase in salary?
They will, whatever level they come in on under the TEI distribution is what they will be paid.
So will the teacher that came in last year with the 43,000, will we bump her up to the 50,000?
So all teachers who are, came in last year and receive an evaluation under TEI, their lowest ranking will be progressing 1, and I believe that is 51,000. So yes, they will be moved up to that level.
So if I'm a starting teacher last year and I'm getting, you say progressing 1 is the first level?
Well, there's novice, but novice is first year ever, so that doesn't apply to that teacher.
So I'm a
So
first year
yes,
teacher.
it's the first level for them.
So I got 45,000 when I came to the district. And so this year I will become automatically a progressing 1 teacher?
Yes, if you make it to your second year, keep in mind there's a $5,000 cap on an increase in salary.
Well, we said that we were going to bring in our teachers, I think, at 50,000.
That's correct.
So my question is, if I'm a teacher last year and I came in at 45,000, will you automatically bring me to the 50,000 that we're bringing in the current new teachers this year?
Yes.
Automatically without evaluation?
Well, they get an evaluation, but yes is the answer.
But I'm a new teacher. I just got to the district, so I'm going to make 50,000. Am I
Yeah,
correct?
it's a good deal.
I'm just asking. I'm a new teacher.
Yes.
I'm gonna make 50,000. But last year, I was a new teacher and I came in at 45,000. I'm the second year teacher here. So are you gonna bump all of the new teachers that came in last year to 50,000?
We'll actually bump
Comparable.
them. We'll bump them to 51,000 unless there's a cap. So they'll get 51,000. So
Unless it's, you're trying to make them all comparable. So you're saying if I'm a new teacher and I come in, I'm gonna make 50,000 regardless of TEI. When I come in, I'm gonna make 50.
I think new teachers came in at what, 46, 47 last year?
I looked at it, it was 45.
47.
47.
So they came in at 40. So they'll be bumped to 51.
They'll be bumped to 51, progressing 1 teacher. They'll automatically be bumped to 51.
Yeah. Yes, they will.
Everybody be bumped to 51.
Well, some will be bumped to 53.
But the starting salary for the district is 50, right? So
For
they'll at least be
novice-
bumped to 50 this year. I thought I read that somewhere.
Novice teachers will make 50,000.
Okay. Ones that just, because if I'm a teacher and I'm still at 46 and you come in as a new teacher and you at 50, I think that's kind of,
Our teachers are our early teachers or teachers with a few years of experience are gonna get a good bump.
51.
Some
Jim,
will
the
get
other
more.
question, what do the ratios include? Teachers listed at 1 to 16, what does that include? All teachers, core teachers, money from SEE, Title I?
I believe it includes all teachers except for special ed.
All teachers are special, so it'll be 16 and 1, and special ed will have. So we have inclusion, so how's that gonna work with 1 to 16?
Well, the special ed teachers are pulled out of those numbers. So if they're included in the classroom, then they're included.
So it's 1 to 16?
Yes.
And
But I don't
special-
know what special ed is. We'd have to look in the part of it. So, we just pulled up the special ed out.
Pre-K is 1 to 24. Isn't that 2 up from the best practice?
Well, the guidelines is 1 to 22, I do believe, but we do staffing. But again, as I showed you, is the actual ratios are much lower than what we budget at.
So it's going to be 1 to 24 is what's on the slide.
That's what we budget at.
But best practice is 1 to 22 for pre-K.
So I think when you say best practices, is first of all, is probably a guideline, And second of all, it's what is in the classroom. And what we're saying in the classroom is that the classroom is much smaller than what you're calling the best practices.
Also gonna be lower than 1 to 22?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that when we look at averages, it appears to be that way, yes.
Lower than 1 to 22.
Point of information, Dr. Blackburn. But didn't we
I'm supposed to
allot,
accept the
Hold
point
on.
of information.
Come on, Brenda.
No, you didn't know.
I just wanted, we said 1 to 24 on the pre-K, but I thought we allotted in the budget last year, don't we have an aide in each pre-K classroom? Okay, so there's 2 adults per that 24.
You've got more than the 22, there's usually an aide. in
Okay.
that.
So the aide in every pre-K class?
Well, I won't
She
say
said-
it's every single one, but
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, she said yes. it's the
Christina
aide.
says
I'm
yes.
just concerned
Go with
about
Christina.
4-year-olds. I think we had a major discussion about
We
that.
did.
Okay, I'll yield. I'm good.
Thank you. Trustee Foreman,
Thank
I think you were next.
Thank you for yielding.
Yeah, I had a lot of pleasure questions.
Jim,
All
if you
Yes.
go to page 18,
I just have a few questions. I try to make this quick. And maybe we can talk later.
looking at the first bullet, salary and benefit increases
Yes.
of 10.4 million, including 3% raise for non-teaching staff. So how many additional staff members would that mean, and what positions would that mean?
Well, we talk about that later on in the presentation. If you look, but approximately, and again, these are
Well,
approximate
and as it
numbers,
looks,
approximate
okay, you know.
numbers. We have 20,000 employees. Half of those are teachers, half of those are non-teachers.
That didn't answer my question.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
I'm assuming that this is for non-teaching staff. That's what it says,
That's correct.
N-O-N.
Correct.
So, when it's non-teaching staff, I'm asking what positions are we talking about?
Let's see, if we look at the page, I don't know if it carries here or not, but if you look at proposed salary increases starting on page 29, here is the 3% increase for selected groups. Employees eligible for personal increase include teachers not on TEI, related instructional, professional support trips, support staff, food custodial services, maintenance and operations, police and security, central administrations.
Okay, so this is
Page 29.
not central office type people.
Well, it is,
Oh, it is.
includes central administration, that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth bullet
Could
down on
somebody
page
help
29.
me? I'm trying to understand, maybe you need to get the information to me later.
Sure.
For central office,
Mhm.
how many additional positions are we talking about?
In central office positions, what we did is if there's any additional central office positions, we took vacant positions and we may have switched those into central office, but in the total increase in staffing, there was, as I say, 75 increase in total staffing. If you go to page,
That's not gonna help.
But, yeah,
That's not gonna help.
she's asking how many of those are
Out
central office.
non-teaching central office staff. How many? What are the positions?
sure,
I mean, that's
we'll
a
provide
simple
that.
question.
All right, we'll
That's a
provide that.
simple question.
Sure.
Could you please get me that? Then the third bullet talks about school leadership and campuses, 2.45 million. What does that include?
I have the list, let's see.
Question is.
What is
of
2
the
point,
third
the
bullet,
2.8
which is
million?
the school leadership and campuses, 2.45 million. What does that include?
That includes school leadership, 2 EDs, 10 assistant principals, leadership development of 150. The 10 principals, assistant principals was 800,000. School leadership, 2 EDs was 300,000. And enrollment increase for 20 teachers of 1.2 million.
Okay, so Superintendent Miles, we're getting 2 additional EDs. I thought we had EDs in almost every area. So what would these 2 additional EDs be doing?
In school leadership for the executive directors, what we've done is we're trying to make sure that we have good bench strength. What we found in the past 3 years that
Excuse me, what was that? Bench?
bench
Strength?
strength.
Okay, what does
And
that mean?
I'm going to explain. Over the last 3 years, we have had pretty strong EDs. Some of them get jobs, and they move on. But when an ED does move on, for a moment of time, there's nobody to replace that person. And these are people that have to evaluate principals. And so we want to make sure that we have an ED that's ready to go. So it's helped out a lot this year, for example, and those are where the 2 EDs are.
And so what would these 2 people be doing while they're waiting to get on first?
So there's a lot of things that EDs have to do. So they're helping to calibrate between schools, they're helping to calibrate between EDs, they're filling in for EDs on some of the training, and it's run by school leadership.
Jim, bullet number 5. Special education moving to the general operating fund.
Yes, correct.
So is it currently at 14.6 million?
Yes, I believe so.
That's
Yes.
the current, and you just,
Yeah, right,
okay, so you're just moving
Yes.
this over to,
correct. General operating fund.
okay, so when it was budgeted before, where did it fall?
It fell into special revenue funds. It was provided by the ARRA, which was back in, I believe, 2008-9, when the federal government in the Great Recession moved money to the states for employment. And what this district did is they paid special ed positions out of that money, and it was called ARRA money, and the ARRA money actually has stopped. And so in order to keep the special ed program in place at the same level, we had to move it to the general operating fund.
So it really doesn't affect our general operating fund?
No, it does affect the general operating fund. It increases the general operating fund by 14.6 million.
But it should be a wash, correct?
No, because remember, special revenue funds are coming in from the federal government through the state. And so it has no effect on what we would call the M&O, or, that. So we have to move it into the M&O or the operating fund. And when we do that, it's additional money into the general operating funds.
But we
that
have a
to pay
line
out.
item for that, which is gonna be a wash, correct?
Yeah.
I get it. I asked it for a reason, I get it. Thank you.
Okay.
If I could direct your attention to page 33. Under campus leadership. First item. We're hiring 15 additional people.
Page 34, which is looking at staff to student
No,
ratios.
33 issues.
33.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we are only, in terms of, if you look at the bottom line, we are hiring an additional 75. But you can see that it says total general funds, we are adding 230 in the general funds, but we're reducing 175 out of the special revenue funds. 109 of those,
She's asking about the 15.
the 15, okay, the 15 in school leadership includes the 10 assistant principals and,
And then the new campus.
yes,
Leadership at the new campus.
Yeah.
okay, leadership of the new campuses, which are 5.
5 at the new campuses?
Yes, the 4 new campuses. Thank you, Christine.
And then I just got just a couple of more pretty quick questions. What about current debt level?
Well, as I say, through the refundings, we've saved out of that total debt level, 134 million, and we're still working on that.
What's our current debt level?
Our current debt level, if you look on page 42, the end of this year will be $4 billion. You can see 2.4 of that's in principal and 1.7 of that is in interest. Next year, we expect a 2.36 with the 1.5. I don't believe this includes but that'll be out of the general fund, so this should be good for next year unless we have a bond election or, so that's the numbers right there, 42, where it says debt and debt service fund, principal.
So our
and interest
current debt
expense.
level is 4 billion.
Yes.
And we're
Yes, ma'am.
projecting for 2015, 2016 that our debt level will be 3.9 billion. Is that
Correct. 3.9 billion, right.
Okay, just trying to make sure I'm right. Okay, and then if you go back to 38 for me, just real quick, and this will be my last question for now. You there?
Yes.
Okay, fund balance. How much of the 324 million are assigned? Assigned dollars.
I want to say about 175 million, which would be approximately, it would be 143 million, 3 for the QSCB bonds. It would be 25 million for the administrative facilities, and then probably an additional 10 million, which would include what we call rollover, and which is funds that were in purchase orders that won't be received by July 1st, and so we'll roll it over the next year. And then in inventory, there'll probably be about 7 million, so that would be 10 million. So that would be 8, 6, 7, so about 178 million would be in the sign, yes.
Okay, so does the 324 million include the 43 million that was
No.
deducted?
That's taken out,
That's taken out?
yeah,
It's already taken out?
yes.
So 324 does include the 43 million?
No, it was taken out. See, you all approved the...
Maybe I need to say it another way.
okay.
Takes that into account.
Excuse me?
It takes it into account.
So the 324 takes into account the 43 million?
Yes.
That's right.
Okay.
So what happened was this year, we said we're going to take 43 million, but we believe by the end of this year, we will make up about 25 million of that. So the effect is that the change to the fund balance by the end of this year will only go down about $18 million.
I love assumptions, but I'm not good on them.
That's why you
So,
pay me.
excuse me?
He said that's why you pay him.
The big bucks.
Not a good thing to say.
I know, I just raised my hand, I want to take it back.
I'll take it, I'm
That's-
sorry.
Okay, I apologize.
Thank you.
Offended
Okay,
anybody there?
the estimated revenue minus the 19 million in expenses.
Yes.
Could you explain the 19 million in expenses?
Well, we went through it in terms of, you know, the total dollars. let's see where that is. So here we go. So essentially, right now, our best estimate of the total revenue we will receive next year is $1.4 million. We do know that that number will change before you adopt a budget, because we know that the legislation that is up there in August won't be settled until by June 1st. We expect that the expenditures will actually be $1.479 billion, which is bringing on the TEI and bringing on all of the other assumptions back on page, where is that?
I get that. Let me just ask the question.
And then we're giving a credit of $55 million for vacancies, which means that we're right now looking at a deficit budget of about $20 million.
And that was my direct question. Is that the 19 million, you are presenting a budget to us that will have a deficit of almost $20 million.
Correct. That's correct.
That's crazy. Thank you very much.
Okay. Trustee Michigan.
Just a question on page 20 about early childhood education. So we're projecting, or you're asking for a net increase of $7.3 million.
Correct.
How many more children would be covered by pre-K next year than this year?
Well, what we have in the budget is 23 additional teachers. So that would mean 860 additional pre-K students. And we do have another 20 teachers overall. So it could be a little bit more than that. But these 43 are directly for pre-K programs. We do understand is the director of the early childhood program that actually expects more. We do have approximately, as I say, 70 teachers built in for leveling, so we show who actually shows up. So we've got $3 million or approximately 50 teachers at leveling we could add, and then we have the other 20, so there are essentially 70 teachers that we're got kind of contingency for if they show up. And as I say, we've got the 43 additional teachers here, which would be approximately 860 new students at early childhood.
Alan, do you want to rebut any of that?
I'll stick with Jim on this one.
Okay, and is there additional training dollars in this $7.3 million figure?
Yes, I know there's at least 150 in professional development. And I would have to look at Alan's organization to tell you exactly how he's got it all laid out.
So there is significant ramp up of the training for our pre-K teachers, which has started this past year. We'll certainly continue that. We now have a coach in place for every 15 pre-K teachers, which is a pretty strong level of individual attention for each of our pre-K teachers. And I think that there is, in addition to some new funds, there is also an awful lot that we're trying to do to optimize the funds that are already in the system.
Okay. Is there any additional funding for parent education, ages 0 to 3?
Yes. Yeah, so there's a couple places. One, we're looking to expand kind of the district-wide parent education initiative, and in fact tonight you'll see on the agenda that we're looking for approval to be able to contract for a portfolio of parent education models so that we can more broadly cover the entire 0 to 5 spectrum. And specifically, we're hoping to pick an area of the district to really go, I guess, go deep in terms of seeing if we can really align parent education for kids starting at 0 all the way through that continuum. Can we see some really more significant impacts than we're currently even seeing? And right now, we see some examples of that. We have not been explicit about that, but what we can see is some examples, for example, where through our partnership with Avance, we can see that there were some kids that did end up being in Avance from the time they were 0 years old, and then happened to transition off into Hippie when they turned 3. And we're seeing that is a very small population that happened with, and not enough for us to say with certainty. The early indications are that is a very powerful combination.
Okay, thank you. All right. Hold on one second. We're going to go Trustee Jones and then Trustee Bingham.
I'm still opinion on what Dan was saying.
Okay, go ahead.
It's just a real quick question. It has to do with the Avance program. Are there plans to increase the number of Avance programs throughout the district? Because I've seen those and they're very good.
Yes. So I mean, I think again tonight you'll see that we had put out an RFP to be able to more broadly work with the portfolio of the home visitation models. Avance is one of those respondents to that RFP that we would like to be able to make more significant investment in, because their results have been phenomenal. They have great relationships at the campus levels, both with the campus leadership, but also more importantly with the community at large around the campuses. And so we are big believers in a lot of what Avance is doing. What I would say about Avance as an organization is that Avance actually has several different types of models that they run, which is also strategically beneficial for us because we can try a few different things with them as an organization.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for letting me get that.
Okay, Trustee Jones.
Thank you. As long as you're here, I might as well start on early childhood. First of all, congratulations and thank you for all the fine work you've been doing in Austin to make sure this does go through and we get additional funding, as well as support for the growth that we need to make sure we address. With respect to the $7.2 million, this might be a question, I guess, for either you, Jim, or the superintendent. Where does that, I'm looking at the board goals, where does that almost $3 million show up in the increased amounts that are here?
Well, part of it is going to be goal 1, which would be teachers. That's the 43.
Okay.
I believe part of it is parent involvement, which is goal 4. And
so I think what would be helpful as I look at the budget is to be able to map some of this back. So it would be great to have a breakout in each of the goal amounts, what it's going towards and how does it track to other areas that were reflecting increases in spending. But with respect to pre-K, so when I look at classroom versus central support systems now and federal, now we're a good example. Under the bridge plan, we are opening or targeting to open a pre-K center north of 635. Yay, long overdue. Where will the funding, I mean, I know we took care of the facility-related funding, but programmatically and with respect to the teachers and the staffing and the resourcing, where is that going to show up in terms of the budget?
well, it in fact is, if you look back at the FTEs, you'll see that part of those FTEs are due to the new schools. Remember, I think we had 15 that talked about campus leadership, and so part of those FTEs are in the are there. And then also you have to remember, I believe, if you'll correct me, is that we brought some of the staffing in the last budget, and some of the budget amendments we've made in the last year, and then the budget amendment, not last year, but last month, and then we'll make some more in this budget amendment that we'll talk about later.
So I think what it would be helpful, and this is, I guess, some of the challenges, is there's lots of places this is being impacted. What we need to see is one picture that says, here's the spending going into this particular programmatic area, and this is how we're going to support it over time. Because the growth, got to make sure we make the proper investment. I know we're on that track. I just want to be able, from a fiscal perspective, to see how it's being done. The same, I think I was going to make the argument about choice schools. I don't really see in this budget where any of that is reflected. And I know it should be in here somewhere, but I can't see it. It's just not something that is apparent. And again, I also want to make sure we're making enough of an investment. I think that's always the other part of the question. And this is a good way to check it, especially as you're planning over time. I also would like to see the demographic analysis. I know Velia did a great job with presenting to the Future Facilities Task Force GIS and demographic analysis district-wide. I think it would be helpful if not only the board got this presentation, but also the additional presentation on the early childhood and related areas of growth, and tying it all together, because I think we need to have one demographic picture as a district as we move forward, and I'm not sure we're doing that quite the way we need to for planning and budgeting purposes. Which takes me to FTE counts, Jim, and thank you, Alan. If no one else has any more questions. I'm concerned because I'm looking at numbers and I just don't see how they are aligned with other numbers. And I'm looking at page 33 specifically on FTE counts. And I'm going back through the PEAMS data and also previous budget workshops in prior years, and I'm looking at total personnel as we've reported it, and according to the PEAMS data in October of this year, the total personnel was 21,715, but according to this, you're saying 1415 FTEs or 19,719. That's a pretty big differential. It's almost 2,000 headcount differential, and you're saying this is all funds. I'm confused as to why there's such a big discrepancy.
Yeah, again, I'd have to research that discrepancy.
Well, this is PEAMS. I'm strictly looking at state data, and I'm looking at FTE numbers as reported here. Even under 1314.
Are you looking at budgeted numbers, or are you looking at actual numbers?
I'm looking at total personnel, which again, to me, is what we report.
Budgeted personnel, or
and
is
it
that?
could be half person versus FTE.
But even if it's a half person, again, it's still going to come up in terms of personnel.
Now, we have a lot of half-time employees, partial employees. So
It could be food service, we can research it.
Yeah, I was just going to say our numbers are not aligning in terms of what we're putting out there in various places, and I just want to make sure
This
that we're
doesn't
reflecting
include
things accurately.
food services. This is only general fund.
And the PEAMS would consider food service, which is another separate fund, but we can still research.
Right, so what I'd like to see is the complete picture of total FTE, which again is an important number for a school district, especially when 82% of your budget is being driven by headcount. And I appreciate that you have some part-time, but it's still a question of a lot of your costs are driven from these numbers, and so it's important to see that as one picture. And normally it's broken out. I mean, every data source I've gone to, you have a breakout of campus professional staff, central administrators, district-wide professional staff, campus and central support staff are usually the the 4 key categories that you'll see, plus then whatever else. And then usually the campus professional staff can be broken out, as you've done. Now on campus professional staff, the areas that we usually see there broken out are teachers, student counselors, librarians, nurses, and what are called campus administrators. And I'm not seeing the same numbers here. For example, what is teachers, the numbers that were reported, again, if I look at fiscal year 14-15, we show, let's see, on teachers alone, 11,103. Here I'm seeing 10,542. And again, I'm not, teachers is a defined category. So if teacher assistant or something is in there, I'm confused about how that's being reflected. So I think what we just need to do is make sure that as we look at categories, especially when we do external reporting, that we're being consistent in terms of what we're showing internally and what we're also showing externally, so there's only one picture of the numbers. And
Well, I can tell you that there are 1,769 food service employees that you would have to add to this.
17 what? I'm sorry.
1,769.
Okay, so that may account for the part of that discrepancy we just talked about. But again, this is back to knowing what our total budget looks like and not seeing just pieces of it.
We're trying to show you in this one, remember that we're looking at the general operating fund, which pushes that $1.04 tax rate.
Yeah, I understand.
Showing on the,
But we're also here to do a budget workshop, which is all categories of spending and how we look at.
we can do a finer tune of that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we have the whole picture, that's all. With respect to the campus-related numbers, campus professionals has grown pretty substantially in the last few years. I'm curious, so our student headcount has been, somewhat, it's been slow growth. I mean, essentially we presumed it was faster growth, it turned out it wasn't. But yet our headcounts are up, and I know some of it is to help with the ratios, and we've talked about that, but some of it is, I'm not quite understanding the actual way in which things are counted. So for example, where do instructional coaches get counted? Which category do they show up in? Are they under teachers or are they under campus administrators?
Actually, they're entitled, they're federally funded, so they're not in this count.
They're federally funded, they're not funded out of general operating.
Do they have to be federally funded?
That would be a district decision.
So that's the decision this district has made, is to take the instructional coaches. So in terms of the FTE counts for teachers or campus administrators, they don't show up?
Not for the general operating, no ma'am.
Trustee Jones. Jim, I think you told Joyce we're cutting 175 coaches, 175 out of special revenue.
No.
I said there are 109 that are moving from special revenue funds up to the general operating fund. Those
And
are
that's
special
coaches, would that be coaches?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll let her, she had the same question.
No, special revenue.
Yep.
I mean, special ed.
Oh, they're special ed.
Special ed.
Out of special revenue.
Okay. So,
Thank you, Joan.
yes, sure. Thank you. With respect to the campus administrators, that number, from what I'm looking at, based on the delta between the 12-13 school year and this year, has gone up by over 420. So if that's not instructional coaches, is that all assistant principals or some other type of personnel on a campus?
Our assistant principals.
So that's,
I would have to look at it, but I do know that our campus leadership, yes, has grown over the years, over the last 2-3 years.
so that's what's driving that. Okay.
Yeah, in general, the picture is we've added a lot of assistant principals, we've added a lot of counselors, we've added testing coordinators, we've added instructional coaches. So yeah, we've added quite a bit of staff over the last 3 years to the schools, and most of it, not counting the teachers because of enrollment and things, are due to the 4 categories I just mentioned.
Yeah, and that's fine, except that when I went in and looked at the actual number of counselors, we're down over time, and actually it's still a pretty low number on a relative to campus ratio basis. Librarians is also a category that's been pretty flat. Nurses is declining, or went up by I think just a few. So I did do a breakout actually on campus professional, which you can do because those numbers are
Yeah, I'd have to
categorical.
look, but we're up in counselors. We added elementary counselors last year.
We did.
We didn't decrease the number of counselors at high schools or middle schools, so we're up in that, and we're up in instructional coaches, APs, etc.
Well, I think we all need to make sure that we're looking at the same numbers because I'm looking at what ultimately the differentials are based on budget versus actual, based on what actual head counts in categories we're looking at. The other thing with respect to salaries, when you did the analysis of the 3%, and I went and looked at some of those other districts, many of them didn't give increases over time. So some of them are playing severe catch-up. Others don't have, or others have large student growth rate numbers. So they're also kind of in a different mode than we're in terms of trying to make sure they attract qualified people. What justifies, I know that when we did salary surveys in the past, some of our administrators and senior administrators, in fact, are overpaid relative to the market. So what justifies a 3% sort of above just everybody gets a number versus looking at actual categories and making sure that it maps to market related levels that make sense?
Well, we would certainly consider, all districts, in a certain sense, part of our competition in terms of what's there and what's not. And as you can see on 28, and this survey was not done by us, this was done by TASB, Texas Association of School Boards.
Sure.
Says 58% of the school districts next year will give 3% or higher raise.
Right, and I'm aware of that. And I think that in many districts, who haven't given raises over time, it's long overdue. And certainly the data reflects the situations that have occurred. And also when you look at, and I did the top 60 school districts in the state of Texas, which actually all have greater than 20,000 student population. In fact, it's exactly 60 school districts that have greater than 20,000 population, and looked at their student population growth as well as salary related issues, and it's all over the map. Many of them, some of them, their growth rates are off the charts in terms of students. Others are flat to declining. So you can't say we're all created equal. And then you also have to look at within our region. A lot of the largest school districts are in our region, but again, many of them have not been giving. They haven't had the benefit of some of the things that we've done over the last few years, and don't have TEI. So I'm just asking about administrators now. I'm asking for non-Chapter 21 and non-campus specific people. Central office, we're given a 3% increase, right? That's part of the assumptions built in here?
Yes.
All right, and I'd like to see a further analysis on that, because I'm not sure I understand what justifies doing that at this time, especially in a number of categories at the ED level or higher where we're overpaying. And that market analysis has been done.
Do you mind if I go to Dr. Blackburn and then we'll come around for a second?
Sure. I'd invite Dr. Tennant.
Yeah.
That's all right, you can come back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Blackburn?
Let me go back to the beginning. Starting at page 9. So there's talk about a possible TRE election or a bond election. So if we do a TRE, how would that impact the tax rate?
Well, if you did a TRE, you could increase the tax rate all the way up to $1.17, which would be an additional 13 cents.
Okay. And on the bond?
Well, if you did a bond, we've done quite a bit of modeling of that, and if we were to look at a bond in terms of the same impact that a TRE would for capital facilities and programs, and cut it down to 10 years, 11 years, we would be talking about a 12.9 cents increase on the INS side. So it's just where would the 13 cents show? If we do a TRE, the 13 cents is going to show on the M&O side. If you do a bond equivalent to accomplish the same thing as TRE, you would show a 13 cents increase on the M&O side.
Okay, so it's just a matter of what this shows on the M&O or the INS side.
Correct. Now, one thing is, if you did a TRE, is that we could then lower the, there's possibility that we could lower the INS by a penny and a half in order to bring the actual increase to the taxpayer at only 11.5 cents and still accomplish what we need to. And the way we'd be able to do that is we could do that by eating into the INS fund balance.
Okay, now When would the tax rate take effect if either one of these passed?
Well, what you would have to do is, if you did a TRE, you would have to set the tax rate in August, and if you called the election on the 24th, then
For
November, on August 24th for November, the tax rate would be in place, and if it failed, we would then roll back to the $1.04, and if any had paid their taxes early, we'd have to refund their taxes.
Okay. They would pay their taxes before November?
Not me.
Okay, I'm just wondering. Okay, next page is page 16. Where does the E-rate reimbursement that we received, where does that show up on here?
I believe that the E-rate reimbursement shows up on revenue from federal sources, and other financing sources is the MAC-SHAR. So the E-rate would be, I believe, in the first line. Not the E-rate, yeah, the E-rate.
Yeah. So I thought I heard that we have received about 36 million.
Yeah. So I think it's just reversed. And some of this are offsets by increases that we expect also. So, I would have to get into the details if you wanted, exact numbers. So right now it's just projected numbers, but it's really those two lines together, the revenue from federal sources, other financing sources, that the E-rate and the MAC-SHARs, but altogether the E-rate and the MAC-SHARs, essentially it's the additional money that we received in the current year, 14-15, of about $30 million more than what we expect we will receive in 15-16. So if you look at the 15-16 projected numbers, they in fact closer reflect the 13-14 year before we received the E-rate money, because remember in 13-14 we received no E-rate money, and also we did not receive any additional money from MAC-SHARs. So we received all of that additional money in the 14-15 year, and we don't expect to receive it in 15-16 for both those. Okay. Though we will get more E-rate money next year.
Right, I understand that. Okay, on page 18. I'm not sure if I heard what the TI cost, the review cost. What is the $2.2 million paying for?
What that is a lot of the district distinguished teacher reviewers are federally paid, and we cannot use federal dollars to pay those people for that particular activity. And so what we have to do is we have to take that portion of their pay or that portion of their time that they would be using to do the DTR review and pay it out of the general fund, so that we don't violate the compliance issues with federally paid people.
And we're also anticipating more teachers going through the DTR review next year.
Okay, so who's doing the DTR review that we need to add more money and more people?
The specific people we're talking about that were federally funded are people like academic facilitators, academic coaches, those kinds of people. They're typically paid out of Title I funds, and that's where we'll split to fund their salary. So it's not more, that particular group is not more people, it's people we already have that we just are using part of their time during that process.
So you're not adding more people to do it? You're just moving their pay from
federal
special
to
revenue
A
funds?
portion of it.
A portion,
Just a
right.
portion.
Okay. And on page 19, I think Trustee Jones has asked for some more detail, and that's the same thing I'm asking for. Just to see, the 17,000 for teachers, 17 million, I'm sorry. How does that map out in safe schools and so forth? if you can just kind of break that down, I'd appreciate receiving that.
We'll do that.
Okay, and on page 23, you guys do a side-by-side, so on comparison. Anything in particular that you want us to take away from this? Or it's just...
It just kind of for information, and we do it, and we look at it to see that if we're comparable with, especially our biggest neighbor, which is Houston ISD, even though they're 200 miles away. And we also want to look at, the school districts in and around Dallas. So this is, just more for you all to look at. We look at it.
Okay. 'Cause in looking at Austin as far as the amount per child, they seem to take the lead on everything. So, but okay. And if we can go to page 27. What are we using to base our projections on?
Well, these numbers, and first of all, let me say that this will shift, this will change, because we made this projection probably around October. And what this was showing was, I think, our preliminary evaluation of teachers, which have not, completely been filled and didn't have all of the aspects that are included in that evaluation. And it was based on our current teacher structure that we had. That has shifted a little bit, and I know that the valuation has shifted, so this will shift. If you remember, the TEI has kind of a normal distribution, and this distribution is a little bit shifted to the left. So I expect as we get closer to it, this distribution will shift a little bit back to the right towards the normal distribution.
Okay, but this is really based upon last year's numbers.
No, it's the beginning of this year.
Which was based on last year's performance.
Yes.
So what, Trustee Blackburn, if I can ask,
Okay.
so specifically, what is the question?
Well, we're projecting salaries based on TI, and this is the first year that we are doing it.
Right.
And I'm just trying to figure out how are you basing your projection?
So I can talk about one methodology. We use more than one. One methodology is we have the target distribution. And so based on that target distribution, we can project how many teachers are going to be in each effectiveness level. That is then impacted by the number of teachers who already have a salary greater than that effectiveness level would indicate. It also is impacted by the number of teachers who will be retiring. So we put into projections on what percentage of categories of teachers resign in any given year. And then we also had to weigh in the number of teachers who are DTR eligible. For example, we know that we only had 1,477 teachers who are even capped by their principals to be DTR eligible. You have to combine that, for example, with currently 14.7% of all teachers are making $60,000 and more. So when you project what the monies will be, you have to take into account what percentage of them will be leaving, because if they stay, they'll still be making over that amount. So the core answer to the question, though, is that target distribution gives us an idea of how many teachers at each level.
Okay. So looking at the thick red line, we are projecting that less than 1% of our teachers will be at the exemplary level. We're projecting that about 2.3% of our teachers will be at proficient 3. About 4.5% of our teachers will be at proficient 2.
So Jim said that that's old data. It's probably going to be closer to 11% or so who are DTR distinguished teachers.
Which is all three of those categories.
Which is all three of those categories.
I was going to say, 'cause this doesn't really talk about DTR.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It
Those
just talks
three.
about how the bell curve is going to
Yeah,
shift.
proficient 2 and higher were what we call distinguished. So that total number's gonna be about 11%, we think.
But everybody proficient 2 and 3 are not distinguished teachers, is that right?
Yes, proficient 2, 3, and exemplary are what we call distinguished teachers.
Only if they go through the process,
Right.
and they don't all go through the process.
1,402 of them went through the process.
So we had about 75 who did not, for whatever reason. And that doesn't mean that all of them will get that designation. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
That's right.
So,
So we had 14% of our teachers go through the process.
I'm basically looking at all the teachers, not just DT teachers. So when will we get the updated projection?
When will we have the final?
Final DTR numbers, that'll be in June. No, it'll.
Yeah, we won't know for sure until sometime in July, and Carla and Cecilia would want me to say September, because we wait till the achievement tests get back, the achievement results, STAR results come back.
So after the budget is approved, you will know where everyone fit on the scale, and some kind of way we are projecting the amount of money we're going to spend for payroll.
Yes.
That's going to be
That's
in the
correct.
same ballpark.
That's right.
So we won't know for sure where everybody land until September at the latest.
That's
But
correct.
But we're projecting a budget increase in salaries for this year of how much payroll?
It's, would be approximately 30 million.
$30 million increase in salaries.
Right.
Okay. I hope our projections work out. Let me see.
Me too.
I only have one more than that.
That's fine.
Well,
Go ahead.
well, on page 33, I think someone has already mentioned about where can we break down the central office staff?
Yes.
So if we can take care of that, I think that'd be all. And if I recall, not too long ago, Feds or somebody said we had too much money in our fund balance for food service. We seem to be inching back up, which is a good thing when we buy good equipment. So just wanted to bring that out. Thank you.
Mr. Morat, did you have any questions?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, well. There's a motion to adjourn. Hold on. There's a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion to adjourn in a second.
He hasn't even been here this
Okay,
whole meeting.
hold on, trustee Jones.
Make a mockery.
I would, so the motion has been moved and there's a second. That will take a majority to move to adjourn. I would ask that you would take back the motion because I haven't asked any questions. I do have a couple. But if,
It's 11:37. We were scheduled for another meeting at 11. We were scheduled for another meeting at 11:30.
Right.
So the fact that we can't conduct our business in a timely fashion is sort of delaying this entire day. So we have additional budget workshops planned. I just think we should move on with the rest of our agenda.
okay, so the motion has been posed. There's a second. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Do we get discussion?
And all those opposed? Okay, the motion fails. 2 voting yes and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 voting no. All right, I have a couple questions now. First question is adult basic education. I've been a champion for that. We worked out a deal to keep the conversation going months back. But I haven't seen it or reflected anywhere. Maybe I'm missing it. So can we just get a brief update on where we're at with that in the budget?
So good morning, hope you're all doing well. As we discussed about this time in the fall of last year, adult ed was moving the grant was moving off into the Texas Workforce Commission. So what we've done is we've allocated 2014, 2015 DAP funds that was used for adult and community education as a pilot program right now for adult education. And so those, I don't know my budget, but we have it piloted right now in 8 schools. So we are contracting with Lyft and another organization to bring adult education into the schools twice a week for 2 hours each time, so 4 hours a week.
And do we know what those locations are going to be? Because, I mean, Fannin clearly is not going to be a location anymore. It's going to be Idea. So that'd just be helpful.
Yeah, I have the pilot right now where we're having it, and where it will build out. Hold on. The pilot right now is in Brashear, Sandovar, J.Q. Adams, Earhart, Russell, Macon, Holiday, and Roberts. And that's right now. And so we're going to analyze at the end of this year to see, and we also have a parent survey that we're doing right now for our principals evaluation, and there are 2 questions about, do you want adult education in your school? And then we'll build out from there. Because if it's wanted, obviously we want to bring it to that school. However, if it's not, then we need to ask more deeper and see if it's needed.
Yeah. It may also be helpful too to kind of analyze where it was already being provided and where those individuals were coming from. Because like Fannin, I mean, it was hard to get in because there was such a demand. But a lot of those schools that I'm hearing aren't anywhere close to that particular location.
Well, because they were being used right now.
Right.
So when we look for next year, we will definitely look and see. And also know there was 4 locations, so they were driving to those locations, and we want to bring them into their schools where they are located. So we want it to be a more holistic approach and around the family, so the kids are there as well. In the school.
Okay.
Trustee Sullivan, on adult basic education, we had discussed adult basic education going into the Fraser House to support that community. Are we still in discussion with making
It's
that
a possibility
happen?
when it opens.
I'm publicly requesting that that be a site for adult basic education at Fraser House, because we have a lot of felons and different things that come there, and so I'm requesting that.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Paula. And then my second question is around transportation. So we're going to be expanding schools of choice, okay? And I know later on I've noticed that we have a potential policy change that we're going to be talking about. What are our plans for transportation moving forward as it relates to schools of choice, and particularly around Dallas County schools?
There's $1.3 million in the budget for transportation for choice schools.
Transportation choice schools, okay. And is that... So that's for choice schools, and then our transportation budget in general, outside of the choice schools, is what? Where is that?
It's approximately, I want to say, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's less than $35 million.
Okay. So what are our plans as far as providers are concerned?
Well, right now, our providers is the DCS, Dallas County Schools.
So we're currently working with Dallas County Schools to make sure that we can incorporate the choice schools in transportation. They are our vendor, our provider of transportation. So for them, the same process we follow in establishing routes for our normal programs or our current programs.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I did. I have a question.
And then the second round, Trustee Nettle.
So the estimated cost, what is the source of the $47 million in new spending on page 38? What is the source of that?
The $47 million is what we call the district action plans, and you can see on page 19 how that's broken down around goals.
I should say funding source. What is the funding source?
Well, this is general funds.
So it'll be out of, $47 million will be out of general operating funds?
Yes, correct.
The other question, you said something, how many positions are we cutting? Eliminating, cutting?
There were no positions cut other than we moved the positions from the federal programs into the general fund, and in fact we are adding 75 positions.
So total movement?
Net, we're adding 75 new positions.
How many moved from federal to general?
Looks like 155.
155 are moving from federal to general.
Correct.
And then you said something about the vacancies, you're filling vacancies. So how many did we have vacancies from federal to general?
I don't have that number in terms of the number of vacancies. I could give you the number of vacancies based on March in my control book. I can tell you that in the budget, we're giving the expenditures 4% credit, meaning that we expect 4% vacancies, so we're taking that out of the budget. So it reduces the budget by $55 million.
Okay, 155 to federal to GO, is that included in the 47 million?
Yes.
That's included, and that's going up under?
Well, it's included in the general operating fund. They all may not be specifically under the DAPs.
But I see that we're asking for additional 47 million. So
Right.
the 155 is included in the so it's 47 million plus the 155 positions. So what's that dollar amount?
Not necessarily, because some of it may be included in the overall budget of 1.45 billion.
I understand the overall budget, but I'm looking here, district key action, you're requesting for additional money of 47, can I finish, Jim, please?
Yeah.
You're asking for 47 million.
Yes.
I'm requesting, asking the 155 that we're moving from federal to GO, what is that dollar amount? Because that's additional on our personnel and our GO. So what is that dollar?
We will research
So is
it.
it 47 plus 30 million maybe, or 20
I
million?
can't tell you, but we can get you that number.
So there is a number of a dollar amount,
Yes.
estimated number, and I'm requesting for that 155. And then when you look at the federal, on the Title I, is it coming out of Title I, Title II? Because when I see campus coach model, we have 401 FTE. Campus discretionary funds is 404 FTE. Campus parental environment is 100. So which area, 699, which org are we moving the 155 into general GO?
Yeah, again, I will have to research it. I don't know off the top of my head, but we certainly provide that.
As we said, one of our colleagues talked about us wasting time, but I mean, we could get through this a lot faster if we had answers to questions. This is a $1.6 billion budget that impact 160,000 students and 20,000 employees. This is important, and we can't get answers to questions.
I would certainly take umbrage to that, is that I will provide you answer to any questions that you have. Anytime a question is asked by a trustee, I put it up on the tracker.
That's not it, Jim. I'm talking about today. It's the budget workshop, and I wanted to know, 155, you say you're moving 155, so what org code are we moving the 155 from, to how that's going to impact the new resource of a 47?
We will give you that detail. We just anticipated as many questions as we could, but that one, we do not have an answer off my fingertips, so I will provide you.
The other question, this is for Superintendent Miles. The test coordinator, are we using librarians for test coordinator, and did we add dollar amount for test coordinators for our schools?
So the test administration in any school is up to the principal. We have some parameters around who can do it. And so we have schools that use assistant principals, official testing coordinators, sometimes counselors, sometimes librarians. And so each school has that flexibility. We've added a whole bunch of test coordinators last year.
How many did we add last year?
I think we added 22, but if somebody in budget can tell me.
22 out of 220.
It might be about 22, we can get the actual number.
Is there any way that we can look at the dollar amount to add a test coordinator for every school? I mean, the test is a high state testing. It's impacting people's careers and jobs. It just, to me, it's important enough. Can I finish, please?
Yeah.
It seems to me it's important enough that we add that as a budget item. Because when I look at the district action plan, we have the TEI, where it's tied to student achievement. So the test, we're taking the STAR, the ACP, the ITBS, the ACP, the AP exams. I mean, that's a great responsibility. And we have the SAT, the ACT. It seems that, can we look at our 224 schools and what is the dollar amount to add a test coordinator, or how are we making sure all schools, and it's not the librarian. We want kids to read, and when I looked at the data, we're down in children checking out because we're using our librarians for test coordinators. Down in children checking out books because, and when you talk, they're being pulled for other duties on the campus. Can we look at the dollar amount for that?
Sure.
Get a dollar amount.
To
Yeah,
make sure?
dollar
Sure, we can look at the dollar amount.
I mean, that's just of how we're using, so how do we use, is it a full-time test coordinator, or
They're full-time positions, at least so far they have been.
they have been full-time test coordinators on campuses?
I believe it's high schools and large middle schools.
Exactly.
All high schools and large
Large
middle
middle
schools?
schools so far.
Can I get a list of who's with the test coordinator, what schools?
Yes.
And is that out of the title money or out of GO?
I believe GO.
It's out of GO.
Yes.
And so, the other question I had, last year, we, the board, approved 4.5 for chief of staff department. Have we completed that goal yet? 459,000 we approved.
We don't have a chief of staff. We're looking for one.
So where did we put that money, the 459,150?
Well, as I say, last year we had 4% vacancies that we gave a credit to the budget, and because that was not filled, that would be at least part of the 4% that we gave credit to the expenditures.
Is that moving over, just continue with creating a chief of staff department?
So, yeah, it's not, let me just clarify. We don't have a chief of staff, but we have a deputy chief of staff, and we have office manager.
I was just, last year, I'm just looking at what we
Program.
approved.
Yeah, so chief of staff will roll over.
And then we approved 32 systems, 1 million, 1.945 million. Did we ever follow through on the 32 systems needing improvement?
Yes.
So we spent the 1.945 million?
I would say yes, we did.
Okay, so we did do that. Do we have a counting, can we get this, we had received this last time. District Action Plan budget request. And it outlined early child initiative, we spent 1.6 million. The teacher evaluation was 4.2 million.
Are you talking about a year ago?
Yeah, that broke out. That was what I was asking for
So
earlier.
we
That's
have
what broke
we have
out.
That's the
we have something
breakout you
similar.
and Dr. Blackburn
We have the DAP broken out like that.
Can we get that, a copy of that? We already have it, the DAP broken out like that? Because I'm just trying to track
Yes.
our accomplishments and where we are, and then we'll know when we get the data, how that's impacting student outcomes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Jones?
Thank you. So dovetailing on that, I'd also like to do year over year, because one of the things last year we talked about was that we would see increased central office efficiency, for example. We also had specific areas of spending that, we accomplished, but then the question is, did it bring the right value and did it give us the right results? We're not really tracking it through, and you've heard me say that for 3 years, that's a critical part about doing budgeting. We're not actually looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of the budget. We're just doing the numbers. So I'd really like to see more of that analytic. And then to the extent we're doing new spending in some fairly critical areas, we just mentioned that we'd like that breakout so we can see very clearly how that spending goes into the programmatic and other area sides. The other thing is I want to go back to the reserve balance. There was a really nice chart that was prepared a couple of years ago, and I'd like to see it updated. So when we started the Destination 2020, we were sitting on 201 million of balance. At the end of the 12-13 year, which was the first fiscal year of Destination 2020, it increased to 281. The second year, we said it went to 342. I'd like to see that chart brought to 14-15, which would be the expectation for this year. And also how we're looking at it with respect to the projection on the budget. Because I know we've now encumbered part of the reserve balance, but it's also the question that I've had in the back of my mind is what's driving the growth? If where spending is going up, which it has been, and our dollars from the state and other sources have gone up, but yet our spending has gone up, there shouldn't be that much excess. And so I'm really curious to go back and look at the last 3 years, how that worked through. We talked about the categorical spending detail. We talked about efficiency and effectiveness. Coming back to TEI, I'm still bothered. Well, first of all, this chart doesn't have what the total teacher population is, what is N equal to. And that's helpful whenever you reflect percentages to know percentage of what. So that
should be on here. But aren't contracts given now? So if contracts are given now for next year, what are we basing the contract on as far as the teacher? If, for example, the results of STAR and the evaluative part of the process and the compensation part of the process is not been carried out. So I'm a little confused how that's being done.
When it was designed, we told teachers that they would go into this school year if they want to stay with us without knowing their level of effectiveness. However, we have a floor so that they know that the minimum that they will receive is this year's salary. So that's how the contract is designed.
So we've been telling the world that we're going to pay people market, we're going to pay them for performance. I very much am, supportive of that. In fact, I just feel, and I've said this before, I'm going to go on record again saying it, we're not paying people fast enough to the level at which they should be earning, because we're capping. We're also taking time to make the transition. We're also saying, depending on where you are now versus where you might end up on the distribution, there's a time period there. So I'm going to come back to saying it again. We're really not paying people for performance, because until you actually are giving them the money based on their qualification and on their evaluation, we haven't really gotten there yet. It's an expectation, but it's not reflected in the dollars. The other issue that bothers me greatly is if we only have 1402 DTRs, and if I look at this curve in terms of who's being paid at the upper end, and knowing for a fact that we've got more than 50-some-odd% of our current teaching faculty that's new or less than so many years of experience, and we don't really know whether someone can perform until they're at least 2 to 3 years in, we got a huge problem here. Because we're front loading. It's great that we're paying new people better. That's helpful. But our goal here is to have a high quality teacher in every classroom. And if we're losing people at the other end because we're not paying them fast enough based on performance, if they deserve it, they should be paid it. And I'll get off my soapbox, but that's been very critical, I think, that we do that quicker, we do that more proactively, and we don't wait 3 years or 2 years or some future period to pay people, especially our best teachers, the ones we know get the job done and are truly deserving, because now we can evaluate them. Now we're saying we know how to evaluate them.
So, Trustee Jones, if I could comment, if you look at the increase in overall salaries, that's a huge increase. We do have to be fiscally responsible, and so while we do and are going to get to the point where all people are paid what they deserve, the cap is what makes TEI financially sustainable. And it was the teachers and administrators designing this program who said $5,000 is reasonable, and then $5,000 next year, and then the cap goes away. But we are paying faster, and we haven't even talked about the people in the middle. People in the middle are going to get $56,000 next year. It took 10 years to get to $51,000 in the last salary schedule. Today, 47% of all teachers are making below $50,000. Next year, that number goes from 47% to almost 0% of all teachers. That's pretty fast.
It is and it isn't. I mean, to the extent that our bell curve should, in my opinion, be shifted farther, to the right, you want high-performing people. You don't want a district full of novices and spreading it around where I can afford it, but it's not the high-quality faculty that I'm proposing. And, when we recruit, we show them the schedule. We say that if you're proficient 2, you should be at least at 60,000 or higher. If you're proficient 3, you should be at 65,000 or higher, and exemplary, 74,000. And this was the old schedule. As I understand it now, we've got master at 90. So if no one's ever going to make 90, it strikes me that we're not really rewarding effectiveness. If exemplary is only a few people, we're not really rewarding effectiveness. Because I know that embedded somewhere in our system, there's probably better quality people we should be recruiting, and better quality people we should be keeping, and better quality people we should be paying. And that's where I'll go on that. Shifting gears again, I don't think we've been quantifying the turnover costs, and that's something I'd like to see. There are models for that, and there are ways to capture those costs as part of your budget and analysis, and we haven't been doing that. The librarians came to us a month ago I think it was at one of our board meetings during the open period, and showed us how the time distribution is not effective. In other words, they're taken away from actual duties on librarian services to be test coordinators. That shouldn't happen, and I would desperately like to not see that continue. And we did not increase librarians. In fact, when I looked at the numbers, it's been pretty flat to declining. So that's an area where we're asking people to do more, and it's really shortchanging the children, I think, and that's, for our sake, not something we should be doing. We didn't do cost per student. Jim, you did say that was going to be posted at some point on budget.
The cost per students is posted in the CAFR.
But that's last year's data. I'm looking at it as a
That's
function
exactly.
of the budget. We don't do an estimate.
Well, the estimate we would use, it would be the latest year.
Could we do the analysis?
We certainly
Yeah,
can
so
do that. That's
what
no problem.
I'd like to see that. And then I'd like to make a plug for two programs that we've never funded, but we should. One is our Leadership Cadet Corps. Unlike our Junior ROTC program that gets federal funding, the Leadership Cadet Corps does not. It is a high-impact program. It's part of curriculum for middle schools. It is a program that we've seen a lot of success with. There's a direct ROI from it, but we don't allocate any direct dollars, and I believe it's time that we do that. So I'd like to see that be a priority. And then the other is in our co-curricular versus extracurricular, that we do a more thorough analysis of areas like the programmatic side of things like debate, theater arts, all that. We did have a presentation from the department that showed all the increasing areas of UIL. Robotics is now an area, and there are others. These are things in science fairs and things like this. These are the things that truly do go directly to children, and children do benefit from, and I'd like to see us make increased investments in those areas.
I just have
That's all I've got. Thank you.
I'll make it really quick.
Form? Yes, sir.
Jim, where is the Principal Fellows program in this budget? And how much is it?
It is part of the base budget. It's not any new dollars, and I don't remember off the top of my head what the academy is now. I don't know
I believe it's about 2.5 million, but somebody in that.
Yeah, we certainly can provide that.
Well, I'd like to know where it is in the budget, how much is it, and how many people are we talking about in this academy? And then on another thought, I want to get some results of what happened, but that's not a part of this. And then the other thing I'd like to know, Jim, is that for the guest teachers, which are they included in the substitute teachers, or is that a wholly separate category?
Well, yes, it would be part of, I want to say 6119, which is the object code, which would be where we pay all the teachers, because the guest teachers actually are paid on a regular basis for the whole year.
So are they included as teachers rather than substitutes?
Yes, I believe so.
They are included as teachers. Do we know how many that is?
I believe 250.
250 people?
200 what? 240.
240.
Okay. And then what line item would we find the dollar amount for subs, and then how many of those people?
Line item for subs, somebody help me, 61, wait, I can look it up.
6112, she said.
6112, thank you.
Okay, I'd like to know how much that is and how many subs we've had this year compared to 2015, 2014, and 2013. I just need something to give me a frame of reference of what we've been doing in the last 3 years. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Foreman, and then Trustee Bingham, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, I'm glad Ms. Foreman brought up substitutes. Do we have anything in the works for a raise for the substitute teachers? Because I think for the past, since I've been on this board, I don't know if they've even had a raise.
No.
I believe they got a raise about 2 years ago, but I would have to research it. And right now, I don't believe that. I think we're competitive, but
I'm
we
not
certainly
sure,
can look
Jim,
into
because
it.
I checked around and I'm thinking some of the suburbs are paying more, but maybe I'm wrong.
We did do a quick look just recently at
hard say it over
substitute
there,
pay
would you?
rates.
I'm agreeing with you.
And we are, right now, we are right in line. There was one, I think we got an email recently from one of our subs that was saying that I think it was Garland that paid their retired teachers that came back as subs a certain higher rate. But
Well,
overall,
and that's, to me, is an important point, because if you are a certified teacher, and certainly it's a lot better for the kids if we can get a certified sub in there versus a non-certified. And so if we could entice more certified retired teachers to come in as subs, I think that would be a good thing.
and we do distinguish between certified and non-certified. I don't remember the rate. It's 90 and 75.
And so what is that suburban district paying?
They were paying, I think it was 150. As a 125 as a daily rate.
I am ashamed of us.
But
They're not paying them.
at least to say that certified rate is very comparable with the area. But again,
If we
that's a
could,
special incentive for that district.
if
You're
we
right.
could just look at it,
Surely.
you know, if there's some way we could maybe hike it up a little bit.
I
So,
concur.
I concur. We can do that. Absolutely.
We'll look at it.
and it's certified.
We may also look at changing the rate depending on IR campus versus non-IR, things like that.
That'd be good.
And I'm guessing, you know, the budget deficit, you know, we pull some money out of fund balance to do this.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. This concludes our agenda. The time now is 12:05 p.m. and this budget workshop is adjourned.